Coogs house. Houston has the number 5 ranked class in the transfer portal, but what's that going to do to the Cougs?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. And whether you're a U of H fan or just a Kansas, I appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. And we're enjoying the conversation. But I don't say, tell us in the comments down below if you like your ice cubed or crushed. So Martin, fellow film watcher of random college kids from all over the country with me these days, do you like your ice crushed or cubed?
Crushed.
Today's show is brought to you, of course, by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and more on that fun later. But Mara and I got a lot of stuff to talk about. I know there are plenty of other people that make content that are watching film on random college kids. I thought I was watching a lot of film on college kids that don't go to the University of Houston to try and get a gauge on what Houston's going to look like next year because they're in the transfer portal. And I think Martin probably doubled what I'm doing these days as far as how much film he's got going on. And so I want to talk with Martin some about like where he's at on some of these guys and kind of like compare notes almost. I want to talk some about the skill guys, the skinny guys. Houston got another one of those. He's not so skinny on Monday. I have some worries about something on the defense, but first, Martin, you wrote a long piece out about most of the offensive line transfers. We talked last week about Conner Weigman, obviously transferred from A&M, kind of sparked a lot of this. And now it looks like they've got a lot of guys to block for him. And so I think I made my case fairly well known on Monday's episode, but who's your most impressive offensive lineman you saw transfer in?
I think McKenzie Agnello from Mexico. He had, I guess, the most impressive tape. Not that the other guys were bad, but he just stood out the most. If I remember correctly, he's like 6'4", 310, playing center. That's good size for that position. Very athletic. He's really quick at the snap. New Mexico actually did some interesting things with him. He played like nearly 300 snaps at right tackle, and then at the goal line in those situations they play him as like a second tight end.
Yeah, they put him like at a point of attack is what I called it. Yeah. I guess technically that would be a tight end that was in the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was interesting. Just taking advantage of his quickness, good lateral agility for a dude that's that big. So, yeah, I mean, I thought he was a really big get. Where exactly he plays come game one, that's still up in the air with his versatility and the existing players. But I'd venture to say of the guys that came in, I'd pencil him in as the most guarantee for being a starter.
So he feels like the most guarantee almost also because he's flexible, right? Like if he can't play tackle, he can certainly play guard, certainly play center. Apparently you can put him out at the edge in the goal line. I think what impressed me most about him, though, like, I know this sounds cliche for an offensive lineman, he like plays mean in the best way possible. Like, I think personally being a defensive lineman on the other side of him has to be an awful day at the office. Like he really like gets after people.
Yeah, he's not quite like Peyton Dunn mean, but he plays through the whistle every time. So it's just like you got to deal with this annoying guy the whole game.
Yes. And annoying in a way that helps Houston, not like an annoying way that's going to get stupid 15-yarders all the time. I hadn't seen, I guess, every single game he plays. He's played a lot of football at this point. But you also mentioned that he played most of his snaps at center. Obviously a very highly touted recruit in his own right came in Demetrius Pancake Hunter as a center. Do you think there's a world where they play together with one of them playing guard? I think the natural guard would be Agnello out of the two.
Yeah, I don't, and it's not. I mean, Pancake is only, or Demetrius, I think is what he decided to go by. But he can't do anything about his frame. he's only as big as God allowed him to be. So he's kind of isolated to only playing center. So if he was to continue to start, it would be at center. And yeah, there's certainly a world where he lines up next to Agnello. I don't think it's a guarantee that it's time to move Pancake on or anything. I'm not necessarily going that far, but I think with the questions you might have with like Jason Brooks and Matthew Wyckoff, just because Wyckoff missed some time this past season and Brooks hasn't played since 2023. Dealing with recovering from some injuries. Good players. Obviously, the Cougars are happy to have them, but you got to see those guys play and see how their bodies react and how well they're doing with recovery. As far as I know, Wyckoff's healthy, but I just know he didn't play like a full season this past season.
Well, and I think actually in talking to Cody Stovall, host Locked On Oklahoma State, it kind of sounds like similar stuff is going on with Jason Brooks. And I kind of, frankly, as a fan, I'm excited that they have 4 guys that I know can start Big 12 games to play 3 spots, right? Like that's a good problem to have. Having to figure out which one goes where is a good thing, I think, by every statistical measure.
Yes.
And I feel confident that some combination of those guys will start and be successful in the Big 12. Obviously, successful, I guess, is a relative term, but we're doing better than we were a year ago, I think, in that front. We hadn't talked about Dalton Merryman, and I in scanning through before we got on what you wrote with Go Coogs, I think we both think he's a starter, particularly a starter at left tackle, which is very, very important. 6'9", crazy long arms. I didn't find his wingspan anywhere, but I would guess it's positive and that it's longer than his height is, right? I feel like it's interesting because I think he's a consensus immediate starter left tackle. And he's got his own flaws, right? He's at 6'9", 305 is kind of light for a left tackle. You can bull rush the guy. Were there other flaws, or is that the biggest thing you saw going on in his game?
Yeah, I mean, the 6'9" thing, it just comes with its natural benefits and deficiencies or issues with, however you want to phrase it. He's going to be long. He's going to be able to keep defenders upfield at the rush, at the point of attack. But let's say he plays, some rocked up 6'1", 250-pound DN. He's going to have naturally a lower center of gravity. He's going to be built lower to the ground. So Dalton's going to have to bend over a little more to get to him. And so it would make bending and driving off the ball and stuff a little tougher, but not so much so that you're like, well, I don't know if we can play this guy. Of course, I think he's still going to be your starter. And he's only carrying 305 according to what he listed at. So I didn't think he was a poor run blocker, but there might be situations where he's just going to play bigger, heavier guys.
Well, and obviously, I don't actually know. I guess I should ask probably in pre-pod if you'd done much research on Ebaselli because he committed after you'd written the deal on the offensive line. But again, I feel like you've got between those two and Ndukwe 3 guys to play 2 spots. Also a good problem to have. So I think it's interesting they've constructed where like their interior guys are like, classic like steamroller road grader type run guys. That seems to be what those guys are better at. And then their tackles are more pass blocking, deep pass sets kind of guys, big long arms. Am I weird to think that there's a potential, like, even if it's just 15% concerned about that not lining up, like those don't seem to match, I guess, on paper.
Sure. Yeah. I think on paper, there's fair reason to question it or be concerned. But when I watched them, I thought Wyckoff was the only guy that stood out in terms of like play style. I thought he was more of, like you said, like a road grader would lean on guys, with his weight and try to drive him off the ball. Where basically all the other guys that I watched, I felt like were very athletic, moved well enough laterally, like they could get out in space. So, like I think with Merryman and Merryman and Ndukwe are your guys, and whether it's Agnello or Hunter or Brooks, like those guys can get out in front of a screen. I think, and I think Cal can do it too. But no, I think it still allows you to do some of the stuff that we would like to see with the pass catchers that came in and existing, like Boogie. Great in space. I think it still gives you the opportunity to do some stuff and not like pigeonhole you to who was actually playing in the game at the time.
Well, and so anyway, I want to talk about a bunch of different stuff. I got more offensive guys later. We've only talked about one side of the trenches, and it's interesting that they almost feel set there and don't feel set on the other side. But before we get to that, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about our newest buddies over at TNT, because it is that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begin December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch college football playoffs presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs, joined by Martin Marroquin, because I think we're the only two deliberately and intentionally watching a bunch of non-Houston Cougar football players get ready for Houston Cougar football. And Martin, I'm disappointed because I like watching defensive linemen. I think because it's like a very simple position on paper to play, it actually becomes one of the more fun positions to watch, because it's a lot of like things that are easy to say to do and things that are really hard to do. I worry that we don't have a lot of defensive guys, but I also try and tell myself that we just got a defensive coordinator. As a guy that's been in the office and kind of seen coordinators come and go, and then I guess on offense they left and they never did anything about that. What do you think about the fact that they've only got a handful of defensive guys? They've already got 11 commits. I think that's a lot. Looking around the NCAA right now, they don't have a whole lot of guys on defense, so it's a lot of offensive commitments.
Yeah, just the two defensive guys, if I'm remembering correctly, Jordan Allen, Will James.
I think that's right.
Are, in the secondary. Yeah, I mean, it's a little concerning, just because if I remember correctly, you have a week now to get your transfer guys locked in. They've been. It's not that they've neglected the position altogether. They've offered guys and stuff, but I do know that not having a coordinator or position coach with the situation I had to deal with, these kids are curious, like, who am I going to be playing for? Right. What scheme am I going to be playing in? So while Wes Fritz and the guys that work for him are certainly watching film and getting offers out to guys, they can only get to a certain point with these kids, with what they're going to tell them they're going to be doing play style wise. So that certainly matters. But I'm sure they had a list ready to go for the new DC when he showed up of here's our guys, and I'm sure he was like, well, I got some guys too who may or may not be available. Right. I'm sure in the next couple of days we might see. I wouldn't be shocked if there was another surge for defensive linemen signing the way that we saw the surge with offensive linemen.
Well, and they did get 2 DBs, and I guess it feels like a third because Jeremiah Wilson said he's coming back after putting his feet in the transfer portal. He hopped out, and that's another win, I would argue. I wonder, I don't know what you're experiencing, how much time you were in the building with Christian Young, JC Wise coaching the DBs, or Etheridge, I guess either one. But I feel frankly like it kind of speaks to how many eyeballs they had on the defensive backfield, that their only 2 commitments pre-defense coordinator were defensive backs. They're losing Keith Cooper. I think he's going to play a lot on Sundays and be very good at it. Really liked watching him play last year. And I don't know that you can get someone who does that, like has the intangible ability to like make a play when you need it that Keith Cooper did. but they do need to play at least someone at defensive end. Like I think there's something they just have to have a starting caliber body there. What are you thinking? Is it someone on the roster? Is it someone in the transfer portal? You've looked around, I think, probably as much as anyone in America. So I feel comfortable asking you, what do you think's out there?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Mack is returning. He played a lot of snaps this past year. So I mean, there's comfort in having somebody returning that you're getting from. He's on the interior, but Carlos Allen is returning as well. Like I think that's important to have those two guys coming back.
And I saw Stillman's coming back. I saw that today, right?
Mm-hmm.
That came.
Yeah, another big body. And for guys that were already on the roster that you didn't see much, like they had an incoming freshman. I might be messing up his name. I think it was DeMarcus Johnson from locally from Fort Bend Marshall, but he's a big kid. So there is existing size at least on the roster. Brandon Mack played, Carlos Allen played. Like there's some guys that got some snaps. But yeah, I mean, my concern would just be the experience. I think you definitely want to bring a guy in to at least compete for the starting spot, if not get somebody that's of the caliber that is certainly going to be a starter. But I guess it depends on what the scheme is going to be because you have guys that I think can be flexible, like LaTravian McCutcheon, young guy. He was used in to rush the passer. He's more. I think he's like a linebacker, but
yeah. So this like the dog hybrid position is what they're calling it, right? And Brandon Mack played that last year, but they kind of transitioned younger McCutcheon, into that role. And then I wonder, is there a world where you'd move Mack to a more traditional defensive end and let McCutcheon get more reps at that hybrid spot? Because McCutcheon's going to be able to play. He's young, but like he's going to be really good.
No, he's a player, and I mean his body. From when I remember him showing up, he was a string bean to what he was this year. I mean, he's really filled out. He's done a great job in the weight room and with the coach Hester. Obviously, doing a good job with those guys. And yeah, I mean, when Trey was on the field, the limited snaps he got, it seemed like he was forcing a fumble or getting a sack or getting a deflection. And if I remember correctly, based on discussing it a little bit with him in the past, the dog is more like that hybrid where they might drop in coverage, or play the edge. And obviously he's athletic enough to do that. So it would be interesting to see him there. You also have Corey Platt returning, who unfortunately dealt with an injury, and he was out all last year. He came over with the staff from Tulane, another good player. Maybe he gets some snaps there. He's also listed as a linebacker like McCutcheon. But if you get desperate enough, I guess you want to move guys around.
I was looking at Platt, honestly, later for this segment as a plug and play for Michael Batten leaving. Obviously, like Michael Batten, I guess, finishing school, he didn't want to leave, right? But
Right.
You only get so many years. I think Platt plugs and plays there very well. AJ Holmes is going to be missed, but I think they've got some with Carlos Allen, Stillman. I think they've got some interior depth kind of pieces. Holmes was very athletic for an interior guy. I don't mean to say he's easy to replace, but I think they can figure that one out more easily than the end spot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
And they've got two guys in the back half, and frankly had really good secondary play a year ago. I think this defense has a chance to be pretty good again. I'm still diving into tape on Austin Armstrong, what they did at Florida, and really trying to look at what he did at Southern Miss as well. Outside of hearing things, I know you're not a typical X's and O's guy. Do you have any thoughts on Armstrong and the defense?
No, I mean, I was going to try to watch the Florida kid that they had on the visit just to get an idea of what the defense looked like. So maybe see how they might piece things together. I do like that they brought in the two DBs because it just gives them more depth in both corner and safety. So maybe, they create more flexibility with what you can do there and who you have on the field. And
Justice Boone is the guy you're speaking of, right? That's like a Florida, he's in the transfer portal, and he's an edge player, I believe. He's not a Houston local kid or anything like that, but he's a Florida kid in the portal, and we just got the Florida defense coordinator. So I think a lot of people are connecting the dots that visit may be pretty important. You have any insight there?
No, I mean, I don't. I would be making the same assumptions as you guys. According to the graphic I saw, his first visit was with Houston, yeah, I mean, obviously he knows his defensive coordinator is coming here. So
Well, and his first visit with Houston, you hope to not let him off campus. He was a 4-star prospect out of high school. I think that there's a lot of talent there. He's kind of had an up and down, not even that many snaps at Florida.
yeah,
But a class of 2021 kid, am I right there? 2021.
that sounds right.
And so, older, more mature body, developed body, and maybe he's got a lot more success with, some more time on task, familiar defense coordinator, etc. Houston legitimately this evening, I think it was this evening, maybe it was this afternoon. I was going to add a commission for part of that. Got a new skill position in the tight end room, and he's pretty darn good. So I want to talk about him and another guy that's pretty darn good, and some other offensive skill guys, because that's what Houston's been known for in the past, in a second. But first, today's show is brought to you, as I said, by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, check out the latest stats of you live player playing so much more on the same page that you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com, join today, get started with $150 back in bonus bets. You fish your first $5 bet hits at FanDuel.com. Everyone's a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made your daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 or 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. PrizePicks is the best way to get on the action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if your picks don't all hit. If you think like James Cooks have a big week, he didn't have one for my team. Well, he did have one from my bench last week. I thought the Lions team was going to be better than they were. That's a long story. You can go to PrizePicks and get in on the action right now. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs. You're joined by Martin Marroquin, who again is watching a lot of film on non-Coogs. Get ready for Coug football. And we had a commitment today, and we're recording on Monday evening. Luke McGarry, tight end out of Tulsa. I saw some people had him as a top 5 tight end. Some people as a top 10 tight end in the portal. I don't know where you put him necessarily and all that. He is eligible for the NFL draft in 2027, and I bet he gets drafted. He's really good. 6'3", I see him listed here at 240. I think he's a very strong pass catcher. And a little bit I was able to watch before we put this on as a tight end, which I think is important. What stuck out to you when you watched Luke McGarry or when you looked at Luke McGarry's stats as far as analytical data or whatever, as far as making him one of the best tight ends in the portal and now a Cougar?
Yeah, the thing that stood out is he catches the ball. It doesn't catch him. I think on every reception I watched, he was catching the ball like away from his body with his arms fully extended, which leads you to believe he's got very natural hands. He's comfortable catching the ball, strong hands. So he's going to be able to make tough catches. Helps for also if you catch him and run, he can on the run in motion. He can make a play here and there after. But the other thing is, Tulsa was using them on a lot of seam routes and corners, which I imagine you do with tight ends pretty often. It just makes sense with the flow of an offense. But he was really good at keeping his feet in bounds, like on sideline catches and like in the end zone, in traffic, which for a guy, he's not like a massive tight end, but 6'3", 240 is not a small human being. Being able to slow down and have the body control to stay in bounds and make those catches, it's a big deal. And, if you're doing that, for 15 yards, he's going to help you move the ball downfield.
I think it's going to help a lot. And I think, frankly, he is he's a good enough blocking tight end, right? He's not like I think he's better at catching the football as a tight end than he is at blocking. And that's, I guess, in watching some highlights on YouTube. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong out there, internet. But I think that he is more equipped for an offense that's a little more opened up than we had last year. Weigman, you think, is a kind of quarterback that's going to open up the offense a little bit more. I think those things kind of seem to all be working synchronously towards a more effective offense. Am I wrong? Do you think that I'm wrong as calling him a pass catcher first, or is that not what coaches want to hear the tight end's called? But that's my dog.
No, I mean, like, I'll be honest, when I'm watching the tight end, I just want to know that he's going to try to block and not necessarily that he's going to be like George Kittle, because, if he's like that, then, he's playing at Alabama or, whatever top end school at this point anyway. But yeah, I don't know if he's not a good blocker, but I just think he has a skill set as a receiver playing tight end that is valuable, because more often than not, you're looking for a guy who can just catch the ball playing tight end, but is able to, but is willing to block. So he's more than just a catch the ball kind of guy. I agree with it. I mean, Tulsa would even have him like split out off the line. So.
Well, and I'd argue they probably should have used him more in the pass game than they even did, based on some of this. We talk about a tight end that's really good at receiver. We should probably talk about the receiver that's really good at being receiver, and they have a couple of those. But Harvey Broussard is really good. I kind of watched the video and was like, this guy was at Louisiana. Like, wait a second.
Yeah.
He stood out, and I mean, he's fast, he's quick, he's shifty, he catches the ball well. Harvey Broussard feels like a steal.
Yeah.
You're high on him too, though.
Yeah, no disrespect to Louisiana, obviously, for the fact that he was there, but I mentioned it with Go Coogs. I wrote about it, in the article. He just had a weird recruitment process. When he was a sophomore, I remember him being a big deal, a sophomore in high school. And it seemed like the kind of kid like, oh, he's in Louisiana, LSU was going to offer, and he's going to go to LSU and have a good career there. It just seemed like it was written in stone. But from what I saw, I don't know if they ever even offered for whatever reason. So he ended up in Louisiana. I mean, he had like Penn State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Florida. And he had big offers, I think, Florida, but besides the point. But I mean, yeah, the fact that he ended up in Louisiana, he was productive there. But at 6'3", he just moves so well. He explodes off the line. He averaged over 15 yards per target. So they were throwing him the ball downfield. He averaged over 15 per catch as well. But the fact that like each of his targets was averaging over 15 yards downfield is huge.
This isn't your screen pass kind of guy. This is he's going to be open over the top. He's open over the top. He's going
to be the guy isolated on one side. He's a different player than Sam Brown, but used kind of in the way that the old regime kind of used Sam, where he was isolated and they were taking deep shots with him and stuff. More that your principal X, and they don't have that right now. Like the roster that just didn't exist. Losing Manjack and Jonah Wilson, they were both 6'3". Once they left, there wasn't a receiver taller than 6 feet on the roster. So getting him just to have a big target is a big deal.
Well, and he's a big target. I think because of that, you can pair him well with Boogie on the same side, because then you've got either double Boogie or you got to have somewhere to the top, because he's going to go over the top and take the top off the defense. We should mention, though, Amari Thomas is another wideout in this portal class that's committed. He had very productive years at UAB. He made it on, when looking up stuff on him on YouTube, he was on You Got Mossed. He was featured positively on You Got Mossed, I should say. I think Amari Thomas is going to play a role in this. He doesn't have the star power that Broussard does from his previous stop. And so I think that's why he's like playing second fiddle in this. Did you watch any of Amari Thomas? What did you think of Amari?
Yeah, I mean, I like him a lot too. I think he provides a lot of the same things that Boogie does. Where they were using, Tulsa was using him a lot in like the screen game. They were using him on like the jet sweeps. He took a jet sweep like 73 yards against Tulane this past season, and he wasn't touched. Like, he found a seam, and the last 50 yards of it, he was just pulling away from people. Like, he's got legit speed in the open field. But I think his superpower, if I wanted to point to any specific thing, is getting it to him quick and allowing him to set up blocks. He turns into, it's an overused phrase because any player with the ball in his hands turns into a running back. But he has that ability. He has good vision to set up blocks and navigate through kind of the muck. And he's shifty in space.
Well, and all new toys for new transfer quarterback Conner Weigman to play with. I should point out that Zion Chris has also said he's coming back. I will say with Wegman's injury history, being a backup quarterback is going to be important. Having got it started some games is going to be important. And who knows if Chris does a little bit of playing other positions as well. The guy is a tremendous athlete. We'll see how they do all that in the spring game. Martin, you are watching a lot of football between Catapult and your work at Go Coogs. Where's the best place to find you and what you got coming out? And do you have anything on the way these days?
Nothing yet, because I want to make sure I'm talking about more than one guy at a time without the portals moving. So maybe they sign another tight end, maybe they sign some D linemen, and I can package some guys together or something. But yeah, I mean, on Twitter is where I'm most active. I try to, if I see somebody offered, I try to retweet it just so that fans can get their eyes on it, and I try to give like a little synopsis on somebody when they're signed or something, just to give like a brief idea of what I think of somebody.
Yeah, I'm going to say you're underselling what you're doing on Twitter right now. When a commitment happens, you very quickly quote tweet it with a take, some information, and sometimes if there's something you remember from the recruiting process or something like there's always some tidbit. So make sure you're following Martin for all your Houston Cougar information. Whenever someone commits, go see what Martin has to say. I'm not going to try it. It's I assume phonetically pronounced like your last name, Marroquin.
Yeah.
But it's spelled out Mahrowken as in the phonics. That's right. That's the way that goes.
Yeah. Just to make it easier.
Yeah. Mine's Painsworth, but it's also my name, Parker Ainsworth. But that's the way things go.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But Martin, as soon as more big topics pop up or more big portal news pops up, hopefully all in positive senses, we'll obviously be asking what you think again, because I don't mean to say this as in like patting myself on the back, because I think you're watching a lot more than I am. As I look at a bunch of people out there doing portal content, I don't see them doing Houston Cougar stuff. As I see people out there doing Houston Cougar stuff, I don't see them doing portal content. I feel like you and I have this down, and you're doing this like full time. So follow Martin. When stuff happens, we may have Martin back on. We'll see. I know you got your Go Coogs folks too that you got to talk to.
Yeah.
Got to fulfill that due diligence as well. But we appreciate you coming by to talk about these guys, because otherwise it feels like I'm talking into a void sometimes. So avoid portal. There's something there. There's something there. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for portal shenanigans at any time.